what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to why do Americans go crazy for college sports. And I mean, I've done reactions to many different college sport events. I've not really done reactions to March Madness, which is weird actually, because I thought I would have by now. But obviously March Madness is its own college thing, which is massive for basketball. Obviously you've got college football, which is, I think, realistically the most popular college sport in the US. But I feel like when it comes to sports, even stuff like athletics is just a lot more popular and I guess promoted in the US, especially in like US colleges and stuff, because you can get your scholarships and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting to see, but where it comes from, I don't really know where it derives from, the history behind it, and that's why we've got this video today, to I guess understand it. But yeah, hopefully going to enjoy to see my reaction to this and learn about this, because I genuinely don't really have a clue, which is interesting to think, because I've done so many reactions to college sports and I don't really know the history and the culture or the reasoning behind it. But yeah, we're going to jump into this and see why Americans go crazy for college sports. This is old Lost in the Pond.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Lost in the Pond with me, Lawrence Brown. It's that time of year again. We have just had March Madness, or what is known here in the United States as March Madness. That is when everything goes mad in March for basketball, specifically college basketball. Now, in 2010, not long after I'd moved to the United States, really, I got caught up in this whole March Madness because the Butler Bulldogs of Indiana made it to the final, the championship final of that very year. Now, they lost ultimately, but my wife and sister-in-law were supporting them very fervently. Why? Because they were alumni of Butler University in Indianapolis. And, you know, still new to the country, I didn't really understand what was going on. I kind of just understood that, oh, they're just getting behind their university team. But then I thought, well, why is their university team on television? This is quite extraordinary. I've never really seen anything like this. And then you come to find that the whole of Indianapolis is kind of behind the Butler Bulldogs, not just in 2010, when unfortunately they lost, but also in 2011, when they also lost. And it seemed like the whole city was galvanized by the Butler Bulldogs' run to the final. Now, like I said, in England, you wouldn't really see anything like that. I couldn't imagine, for example, my university of Lancaster University getting to some kind of final and then having that final watched by millions on television. It's just not something that happens. The only real thing I can think of in terms of university sports being televised is the rowing between Oxford and Cambridge.
I didn't know that was a thing
that you see once a year. Other than that, it's not really a big thing in the UK. So today, I just want to get to the bottom of why it is the United States is so in love with college sports. So granted, while, you know, pro sports like the NFL do dominate the television ratings here year round, collegiate sports are still wildly popular. The aforementioned college basketball championship finals can pull in anywhere from 15 to 35 million viewers. 35 million is quite extreme. That was back in the late 1970s when Larry Bird went up against...
Okay, that's pretty cool. You got Larry Bird
against Magic Johnson's team.
Wait, who did they play for? Indiana State, and this one doesn't say. That's a pretty cool fucking head-to-head, man.
But nonetheless, 15 million people cheering in at the very least. I mean, that is what EastEnders was getting in its heyday. Now, granted, there are more people in the United States, but 15 million people is not something to scoff at. And that's just the basketball. I mention that right now because in real life we are closing in on the championship game in 2019. But actually, college football...
Do you ever, like, players that ever, like, do well in, like, oh, that's a dumb question. Like, say in these championship finals in March Madness, will any of those players, like, realistically make it? Will it be, like, the odd few that just not manage to get through, but are talented enough to play? Or is it quite a high percentage? Because I always, like, wonder to myself, where do all these American, like, NBA players spawn from? Are they all from, like, colleges, or will some come through different ways? Or obviously some will come from, like, Europe or Asia and stuff, or Africa, South America as well, to be fair, split around, but a lot of them will be through the college system, right? I assume that is the main source of the US basketball players. But then would them, like, say March Madness 10 years ago, will you now be seeing stars from, like, March Madnesses before that are now dominating the US, the NBA Is that just how it is, or is it a lot more complex than that?
Does even better. I mean, you'll see things like semi-final matches garner that kind of viewing figures here in the United States. And if they were just watching on television, that would be one thing, right? But they're also packing huge stadiums, right? So think of Wembley Stadium. It's the largest stadium in the entire United Kingdom. A large capacity, I think, of about 90,000 people can fit into Wembley Stadium. So if you're not from the United States, it might blow your mind, as it did mine, that there are 8 colleges in this very country that have a capacity of more than 100,000. I've actually been to one of them, Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Oh, he went to the Real Madrid. I always see this picture. That's pretty cool, to be fair. He went to the Real Madrid Man United game at the Michigan Stadium. That's actually a pretty cool thing.
Absolutely huge. When I went there, we experienced the largest outdoor attendance for a soccer game in US history at that time. But they pack these houses. They actually exceed 100,000 attendees on average at a lot of these games. So in 2010, not only Michigan, which averaged about 111,000 attendees, but Ohio State and Penn State all exceeded an average gate of 100,000 throughout their college football season. Now, admittedly, you're never going to see those kind of attendances on a basketball court. But while we're on the subject of basketball, that brings me on to something that a lot of people in the United States take part in at this very time of year, and that is a basketball bracket. Even I got involved this year. Basically, what you do is, once you know all of the seedings and all of the first games in this NCAA basketball tournament, you then go on to some provider. In my case, it was CBS Sports. You choose which teams you think are going to win in each round, getting all.
So you get this sort of stuff like the World Cup and stuff. But is this like, so will you get like so when it comes to the World Cup, you'll have 32 teams, you basically randomly select a team, so you have to pay like a couple pounds to put it in. This is like more just for fun. Pay a couple pounds in, then you select a team randomly, you put your hand in like a hat full of the teams or the countries, select one, and that's your team. So you get a really good team, you're more likely to win the reward, but bad team, vice versa. But I don't really think that's what he's talking about here, because he said about going on like CBS and stuff. But so I think I've just said that for absolutely no reason.
To the Final Four and then the championship game and calling that winner. And if you're in a pool with a load of other people and you happen to get more points based on the scoring system, then you win. You win your entire bracket, and it's amazing, and you get this prize. So I was so excited by this notion that I went to the great liberty of firstly learning the seedings of each team to try to work out which ones were good, and also just look at the form book, the history guides and all that. I delved so deep. I did all of this investigative research, and ultimately I failed badly. I got none of my teams to the Final Four. But if you took part...
You know, that's probably more impressive than actually getting the winning team. I gotta respect how bad you did. Fucking hell, I want to see this picture again. Does it show the rankings? It doesn't. I want to see what the actual rankings were.
Failed badly. I got none of my teams to the Final Four. But if you took part in such a bracket and you have any teams remaining in the tournament, let me know in the comments below and I'll give you a thumbs up or something of that ilk. All that to reiterate that college sports are, comparatively to the rest of the world, huge in the United States. That leaves us with one big question.
Why? Here we go.
Yes, why? Why are college sports so big in the United States? Well, you have to go back in time a little bit to the 19th century. That's a century that I often like to return to. Not literally, I don't have a time machine. I'm running out of breath. But in about the 1850s, the first sort of collegiate sport event occurred in the United States when Yale and Harvard engaged in, you guessed it, a rowing competition. You see how this comes full circle?
What?
So in the 19th century, you have all of these sort of college sports emerging, one of which is, in fact, American football. But over time, questions start to emerge about the safety of some of these sports, so they need some kind of rule-making body, right? So that's where the NCAA comes in. So after years of evolving its name, it arrives at the name that we know today as the NCAA in about 1910, and about a decade later, after just sort of passing a load of rules relating to these college sports, the first ever NCAA championship takes place. This is in track and field, and then in the late 30s, about 1939, the very first NCAA basketball championship like that we know today took place for the first time. So right off the bat, pun intended, baseball reference, college sports are already more traditional than their sort of pro equivalent for the most part. And so just in that respect alone, they've maintained...
Also, historically, they've just been around for longer. Okay, that does probably explain it a lot. Yeah, it just explains it a lot more. it's just a lot more, I guess, ingrained in the culture, which in that sense completely does. Like, I understand now, to be honest. Back in these times, though, when these like college leagues were being played or whatever, these college tournaments, would that have been the highest level of that sport? Because I know baseball is like the most historical one, right? So that's been going on for years. So that like outlasts college sports a long way, which is probably why maybe like college baseball I never really hear about it. Is that maybe that's the case for that? But American football and basketball, was there a point when the college levels were actually the highest level? That might have been the case.
Maintain their position in American culture. But given the sort of financial powerhouse status of a lot of these pro organizations like the NFL, is tradition really enough to keep these college sports in the public eye? Well, probably not by itself. The truth is the colleges themselves make quite a lot of money from their sporting endeavor.
30 million from college football.
And the real big thing here as well that
men's ice hockey, basketball, track and field, equestrian. Is that like the horse stuff? Bloody hell. Women's soccer does a decent amount of money as well.
You know, US colleges apart from British colleges, is that US colleges attract some of the top athletes in the nation, some of the top young athletes in the nation, with the promise of an education. You know, sports here is quite tied to college education, whereas in Britain it really isn't. I mean, if you think about some of the top football stars, Wayne Rooney, David...
No link to college whatsoever. Basically, you'll get like young stars. There was a footballer in the Euros this year who was 16 years old playing in the Euros. So he obviously was he was still in high school playing, which is fucking absurd to think. But yeah, like I feel like in US sports you don't like get, realistically, you don't really get like NBA stars that are like teenagers, for example, or American footballers or like NFL stars that are teenagers. I actually want to see youngest ever NBA player. The youngest ever player to play in the NBA was Andrew, who played his first game only 6 days after his 18th birthday, which is obviously incredible. What an achievement that is. The oldest active player... Oh, LeBron's 40... Wait, is it LeBron's birthday today? 40 years and 0 days old. Flipping, oh, that's pretty mad. Can a 17-year-old play in the NBA? Oh, you have to be 19. Bloody hell. So yeah, there you go. Obviously it's a very physical sport of massive people, but what NFL? Because that's the thing, like, I guess with what I was saying, youngest players in NFL history, Amobi Okoye. Can you say the ages? 19 years old was the youngest drafted player. Yeah, like, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's just, you won't get footballers that have been in college, never, which is probably why they get the sort of the like people look at them as like stupid. Like in the UK, footballers are always like thought as like just stupid stuff, which, I mean, come on. If you're going to make all that money, would you go to college? Probably not. Like, let's be real.
Beckham, etc., etc. You know, they were signing up to their respective football clubs, perhaps at the age of 7, playing for the sort of teenage equivalent of
Academy,
Manchester United or whoever it might have been, and then they'll make their first team debut while they're a teenager.
Which is quite beautiful, to be fair. Like, you're growing up within the team. You'll get like players that have been at that club since like 5 years old. They've been nurtured, and they've come through the academy, which is a very hard thing to do, and they make it into the first team. I do find that pretty cool. I mean, obviously there's negative sides to that, which is obviously maybe certain people don't get the certain education they need, which does lead to like certain sad stories of people who don't make it in football. Like, so, like, I don't want to say the word. YouTube will demonetize it, but what's the best way to say it? I don't know. Just, I can't say it. You know what I mean, though. Doing something to themselves that is very bad. That's probably the dumbest way to put it. But yeah, you get stories like that because they've had this whole mindset of like, oh, okay, I'm in this academy, I'm gonna make it, and then they don't make it because it's a lot harder than some people like believe, or just it's very hard in general. But US sports, you got the college sort of side of it. If you don't make it in the NFL or the NBA, you've got a career for yourself. So it's one of those things where, you know what, it's like beautiful that you can like be with a club for your entire life pretty much and then make it, But then also the college side of it, American side of it, if you don't make it, you've got opportunities to make it in other journeys and like jobs and stuff. So they both got their perks, but that does make sense as to why like a lot of US sports stars aren't necessarily as young as like stars you'll see in like football, because there's a whole system around it.
But in that time, they'll have finished school at 16, and that's where their education ends. There is no college for them. Here, it's very much tied to a sort of college education. Kids will be given a sports scholarship, for example, to attend that university. And then, you know, depending on their name recognition as it grows and grows and grows, that can be good for the college. It helps to create recognition, not only for that player, but for the college. And then, you know, funding and things like that becomes more paramount. On top of that, and I don't really have statistics for this, but it's just some more anecdotal and observational on my part, is that I think people here that attended a university then went on to become an alumni of that university are generally more proud of that fact than people in England would be of attending a university. I, for example, don't have any sort of memorabilia from my own university that I utilize in my daily life as an adult. No sweaters, jumpers, or anything of that ilk, whereas you see it quite commonly here in the United States. And so even years, sometimes decades after graduating, you know, alumni from those colleges will still don that jumper, that sweater, and support the team when it's going far in whatever competition it is we're talking about. You're just not going to see that in the UK. So alumni here are fans for life. On that very note, while I was researching for this video, I found this great quote by John Mackay, who is a football coach formerly of USC, which is the University of Southern California, and he was asked how USC had retained such, you know, strong support in Southern California despite the existence of Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams, a pro football team, and he said, "Nobody graduated from the University of the Rams." And it's very interesting that he should say that, and it's very interesting that we should be on the topic of the Rams, because you want to talk about pro football teams. This is a team that started in Cleveland, Ohio, moved to Los Angeles, moved to St. Louis, and then moved to Los Angeles. On the other side of the coin, your college team is not going to move cities. It's going to stay there, right there where you want it. And for a lot of cities, indeed a lot of states, that's very important, because they don't always have a pro equivalent within driving distance. Take the states, for example, of Kansas, Kentucky, Virginia. They don't have, for example, basketball teams that play in the NBA. They just don't exist in those entire states. But each of those states do boast decent to very good college basketball teams. And I think that that's very important for people that live in those states. They develop a sense of community around that college and around what that college has to offer from a sports point of view. And so they don't have to
So in US sports, in like college teams, are they typically supported by the locals more or less? Whereas in like the NFL or NBA or MLB or NHL, will those teams possibly be supported not necessarily from the home fans, although there's probably still a large home fan support base, but also from around the country? Is that sort of how it's seen? So you can you're more likely to support like, I don't know, a team that has a player that you like in the NBA, but then in college sports, it's more just down to where you're from, the closest to you, and the college you've gone to, or like just what you sort of associate yourself with. You're safe. That's how I'm sort of getting this. Which honestly, now I'm sort of hearing that sort of point of view. It does make sense to me.
To these sort of major cities to take in the big teams, the big pro teams, and offer that support. And they know their team will never move cities because it's college based. It's not a franchise that can just move to wherever it wants. So there's that sense of loyalty that remains. And so a final point that I want to make today, and a lot of people have said this to me over the years whenever I've talked to them about sort of college sports versus pro sports. You know, they often say that when you're talking about the NBA or the NFL, for example, that sometimes the pro version of these sports sort of lacks that soul, or it lacks that sort of raw fight that you might find in the sort of the college level, and that the appreciation for those college sports comes about more because of that, and people are more ready to watch them. I know that I find college basketball absolutely fascinating, whereas I'm not so drawn to watch the NBA, for example. And so that, in a nutshell, or rather big nutshell, is why I think Britain and America differ in their treatment.
Well, there we go. That does explain it, to be fair. American here, great explanation. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to put something so familiar into perspective. You're spot on with this video. It's worth pointing out that the NFL and NBA don't have minor leagues of any note. College teams for this role. Well, they do, don't they? Isn't there like different NBA leagues for like younger stars and stuff? G League, that's the one. And the NFL has debuted. AAF this year. But yeah, there we go. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And until next time, let's subscribe. Peace.